Hi guys, tonight we're stepping into the quiet, candlelit corridors of the past. But this time, instead of medieval monks, we're following the scent of lithium batteries and broken dreams through the early 2000s tech scene. Drop your city and local time in the comments. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe light a candle for that gentle glow, and let's walk together into the timeless rhythm of Silicon Valley insanity, where fortunes are made from PowerPoint presentations and destroyed by one bad tweet. You're standing in a cramped office space in San Carlos, California, in July 2003. The air smells like stale coffee, venture capital desperation, and the faint electronic tang of circuit boards that might catch fire at any moment. Your name is Martin Eberhard, and you're about to make one of the most expensive mistakes in automotive history. Or maybe you're about to change the world. Honestly, even you're not sure which. The good news? You've just incorporated a company called Tesla Motors, named after the guy who invented alternating current and died broken alone in a hotel room talking to pigeons. The bad news? You're trying to build electric cars in an era when the Toyota Prius is considered revolutionary technology, and most people think sustainable transport means carpooling in a Hummer. Your office isn't even really an office. It's more like a storage closet with delusions of grandeur. The walls are that particular shade of beige that screams, "We couldn't afford a decorator," and the carpet has mysterious stains that could be either spilled energy drinks or the remnants of previous startups that died here. Your desk is a folding table from IKEA that wobbles when you type too aggressively, which, given your personality, is constantly. You try to lean back in your chair, another IKEA special that makes sounds like a dying walrus whenever you move. The funding situation is about as stable as your furniture. You've got some angel investors who think electric cars might be neat, but most of Silicon Valley is still recovering from the dot-com crash and treating any new venture like it might be secretly selling pet food online. Outside your window you can see the parking lot filled with gas-guzzling SUVs and sports cars. These vehicles burn fossil fuels with the enthusiasm of teenage pyromaniacs, pumping carbon dioxide into the atmosphere like it's going out of style. Spoiler alert, it isn't. But in 2003, climate change is still something that happens to other people, in other decades, in documentaries narrated by people with British accents. Your co-founder, Mark Terpenning, is hunched over a laptop that's older than some of the interns you can't afford to hire. He's running calculations on something called lithium-ion battery energy density, which sounds impressive until you realise it's basically trying to figure out if you can make a car go more than 50 miles without the battery catching fire or exploding. The early research suggests the answer is maybe, if you're lucky and the wind is blowing in the right direction. The whole electric car thing isn't exactly original. GM had the EV1 in the 90s, which they killed off faster than a Netflix series nobody watches. Toyota has the Prius, which is about as exciting as watching paint dry in a library. What you're proposing is different. An electric car that doesn't look like it was designed by someone who gave up on life. You want to build something that makes people want to abandon their Ferraris, not their will to live. But here's the thing about revolutionary ideas in Silicon Valley. They're usually proposed by people who have no idea how hard they're going to be to execute. You're sitting in a glorified closet, talking about taking on General Motors, Ford, and the entire automotive industry with a folding table and a dream. It's like planning to climb Mount Everest with a stepladder and a thermos of hot chocolate. Your phone rings. It's another potential investor who wants to know about your business model. You explain that you're going to build luxury electric sports cars, then use the profits to fund mass-market vehicles, eventually transforming global transportation. There's a long pause on the other end of the line, followed by a polite, "We'll get back to you," which in venture capital speak translates to, "We'll file this under interesting but insane." You hang up the phone and stare at the financial projections spread across your wobbly desk like tarot cards predicting doom. The numbers swim before your eyes in a way that suggests either you need glasses or you're having a stress-induced breakdown. Maybe both. Welcome to the glamorous world of automotive startups, where hope is your primary asset and delusion is your business strategy. The automotive industry, as you're quickly learning, doesn't just resist change, it actively fights it with the determination of a medieval army defending against barbarians. Car companies have been building internal combustion engines for over a century, perfecting the art of controlled explosions and toxic emissions. They've got dealers, suppliers, regulatory relationships, and enough political influence to make small countries jealous. You've got a folding table and a really strong opinion about batteries. Mark looks up from his laptop with the expression of someone who's just calculated how much money they need versus how much money they have. The ratio is approximately equivalent to comparing a teaspoon to the Pacific Ocean. We're going to need more funding, he says, which is startups speak for. We're basically broken running on credit card debt and optimism. You nod sagely, pretending this is new information, and not the central crisis that keeps you awake at 3 a.m, staring at the ceiling and wondering if your neighbours can hear you crying softly into your pillow. The original plan was simple. Build a prototype, show it to investors, watch them throw money at you like you're a stripper at a bachelor party. Reality, however, has been less cooperative. Building a car, it turns out, is harder than building a website or a mobile app. You can't just download an engine from GitHub or use a framework someone else built. Every component has to be designed, tested, manufactured, and integrated with every other component. And if any of those components fails, the car doesn't just crash, it potentially kills people, which tends to make investors nervous. The battery technology alone is enough to give you nightmares. Lithium-ion batteries in 2003 are primarily used in laptops and cell phones, devices that occasionally overheat and shut down. When a laptop battery fails, you lose your PowerPoint presentation. When a car battery fails at 70 miles per hour, you lose significantly more than that. You've been talking to battery manufacturers, and their responses range from polite skepticism to outright laughter. One engineer literally asked if you were planning to strap 1,000 laptop batteries together and call it a day. You laughed along with him, then went home and seriously considered whether that might actually work. The regulatory environment is another delightful maze of bureaucratic hell. Cars have to pass crash tests, emission standards, safety certifications, and approximately 17,000 other requirements designed by people who clearly hate both innovation and human happiness. Each test costs money. You don't have to verify standards you're not sure you can meet. Meanwhile, your personal finances are beginning to resemble a Greek tragedy. You're living off savings, credit cards, and the occasional generous dinner from friends who still believe in your vision. Your girlfriend has started making pointed comments about financial stability and maybe getting a real job, which you interpret as a lack of faith in your world-changing mission, rather than reasonable concern for your shared future. The tech industry around you is recovering from the dot-com crash, but cautiously, like a dog that's been kicked too many times. Investors are funding safer bets, enterprise software, modest improvements to existing technology, anything that doesn't require building actual physical objects that might explode. Electric cars apparently fall squarely into the might explode category. You spend your evenings reading about successful entrepreneurs, looking for inspiration and patterns. Most of them, you notice, started their revolutionary companies in garages. You don't have a garage, you have a rented office space that smells like the dreams of failed startups. You wonder if this is a sign, then remember that correlation doesn't imply causation, a lesson you learned back when you thought logic might be more important than luck in Silicon Valley. The phone rings again. Another potential investor, another pitch, another opportunity to explain why electric cars are the future to someone who's probably driving a Suburban to the meeting. You pick up the phone and practice your smile even though they can't see it. In startup culture, enthusiasm is currency, and you're spending it like you're printing your own money. You're standing in what could generously be called a workshop but more accurately resembles a crime scene, where automotive parts go to die. It's October 2003, and your first Tesla prototype is taking shape with all the grace and elegance of a drunk toddler building with Legos. The air smells like solder, desperation, and the distinctive aroma of electrical components that are being pushed well beyond their recommended specifications. Your engineering team consists of exactly 2 people, yourself and Mark, plus a rotating cast of contractors who show up, assess the situation, and then quietly update their LinkedIn profiles. The prototype vehicle sits in the centre of the space like a mechanical patient in intensive care, connected to various monitoring devices and surrounded by the automotive equivalent of life support systems. The base vehicle is a Lotus Elise chassis, which seemed like a brilliant idea when you were planning this in your air-conditioned office. In reality, gutting a perfectly functional sports car to stuff it full of untested battery technology feels less like innovation and more like vehicular surgery performed by people who got their medical degrees from YouTube University. You trace your fingers along the battery pack configuration, a carefully arranged collection of lithium-ion cells that represents months of calculations, simulations, and educated guessing. Each cell is roughly the size of a AA battery, which makes the whole assembly look like the world's most expensive remote control project. The pack weighs approximately as much as a small piano and generates enough heat to warm a modest apartment, assuming you want your apartment to smell like burning electronics and existential dread. The charging system is another masterpiece of improvised engineering. You've essentially built the world's most expensive extension cord, complete with safety systems that may or may not work depending on the phase of the moon and your collective anxiety levels. The connector looks like it was designed by someone who took the concept form follows function and decided that both form and function were optional. Mark is hunched over a computer, monitoring battery temperatures with the intensity of a NASA mission controller watching a Mars landing. Every few minutes he calls out numbers that mean nothing to you, but apparently indicate whether your creation is functioning normally or preparing to achieve unscheduled rapid disassembly. The temperature readings fluctuate with the unpredictability of your mood swings, which is to say, wildly and without apparent pattern. You climb into the driver's seat, which still smells faintly like the original Lotus interior mixed with the distinctive scent of fear-induced perspiration. The dashboard is a confusion of gauges, switches and warning lights that blink with the enthusiasm of a Las Vegas casino. You're not entirely sure what half of them monitor, but they all seem very concerned about the current state of affairs. The key, if you can call it that, is actually a sequence of switches that need to be activated in a specific order to prevent the battery management system from deciding you're trying to sabotage the vehicle. You've memorized this sequence like a nuclear launch code, partly for safety reasons and partly because explaining to your insurance company why your car exploded during startup seems like a conversation best avoided. You turn the first switch, nothing explodes. This is already going better than last Tuesday's test. The second switch activates with a satisfying click, followed by a gentle humming sound that could either be the motor spinning up or the sound of very expensive components preparing to fail catastrophically. You choose to interpret it optimistically. The accelerator pedal responds to your input with all the enthusiasm of a bureaucrat processing paperwork. The vehicle lurches forward approximately 3 feet, then stops as the battery management system decides that forward motion represents an unacceptable risk to everyone involved. Mark shouts something about thermal runaway protection, which sounds impressive but essentially means your car has developed performance anxiety. You try again, this time with the gentle touch of someone defusing a bomb. The motor engages smoothly, and for approximately 15 seconds you're driving the future. The silence is remarkable. No engine noise, no vibration, just the quiet satisfaction of electrons doing exactly what you've asked them to do. Then the warning lights start blinking like a Christmas tree having a seizure, and Mark begins shouting technical terminology that you're pretty sure isn't in any official automotive manual. You bring the vehicle to a gentle stop and turn off the systems in reverse order, like performing an exorcism on mechanical systems. The prototype sits quietly, probably contemplating its existence, and wondering why it couldn't have been built as a nice, simple, internal combustion engine vehicle like its ancestors. The test, technically speaking, was a success. You moved under electric power without anyone dying or requiring emergency medical attention. By the standards of automotive startup prototypes, this qualifies as a resounding victory worthy of champagne and small celebrations. You're sitting in a conference room in 2004 that smells like leather, ambition, and the faint electronic tang of devices that cost more than most people's cars. The walls are decorated with the kind of abstract art that screams, "We have money but no taste," and the conference table is large enough to land small aircraft. Across from you sits a man who would eventually become either Tesla's salvation or its destruction, depending on which day of the week you ask him. His name is Elon Musk, and he's just walked out of the PayPal acquisition by eBay with roughly $165 million in his bank account, which in 2004 makes him wealthy enough to buy small countries, or apparently invest in your electric car startup that most people consider a sophisticated form of financial suicide. He's wearing a black t-shirt and jeans with the casual confidence of someone who's never had to check his bank balance before making a purchase. You're explaining Tesla's vision while trying not to stare at his hands, which gesture with the manic energy of someone who's had too much caffeine or is genuinely excited about the prospect of revolutionizing transportation. His questions are sharp, technical, and delivered with the rapid-fire intensity of someone whose brain processes information at approximately twice the speed of normal human consciousness. "How many laptop batteries are you planning to use?" he asks, and you realise he's already done the math on energy density, thermal management, and probably the supply chain logistics of lithium-ion cell procurement. This is either very good or very bad for your company's future, and you're not sure which. You walk him through the Roadster prototype, explaining the engineering challenges with the enthusiasm of a parent showing off baby photos to someone who might not actually want to see them. He nods, asks about torque curves, battery degradation rates, and manufacturing scalability. These are exactly the right questions, which means he either knows what he's talking about or he's exceptionally good at pretending. Musk climbs into the driver's seat of the prototype with the careful movements of someone who's either very respectful of expensive equipment or genuinely concerned it might explode. The interior still smells like the original Lotus mixed with the distinctive aroma of prototype electronics, a combination that suggests luxury and danger in equal proportions. He turns the ignition sequence, and the vehicle responds with the quiet efficiency that you finally managed to achieve after months of thermal runaway incidents and electrical fires. The silence is remarkable, broken only by the gentle whir of cooling fans and the sound of your heart rate steadily increasing as you watch a potential major investor evaluate your life's work. The test drive lasts approximately 15 minutes, during which Musk pushes the vehicle through its performance envelope with the confidence of someone who's either very brave or has excellent life insurance. When he returns, his expression is unreadable, which in venture capital terms could mean anything from "this is brilliant" to "I'm calculating how much money I might lose." "I want to invest," he says finally, "but I want to be more than just an investor." This is the moment when Tesla's trajectory shifts from uncertain startup to whatever category of business. Venture includes rockets, social media acquisitions, and the occasional public meltdown on platforms that didn't exist when you started building electric cars. You shake hands, and the deal is essentially done. $6.5 million in Series A funding, with Musk taking the chairman position and a significant say in company direction. It feels like winning the lottery, except the lottery tickets were made of lithium-ion batteries, and the prize might include global transformation or spectacular public failure, possibly both. What you don't realise in this moment is that you've just invited a man into your company who will eventually buy Twitter for $44 billion, rename it to a single letter, and transform it into his personal platform for sharing opinions about cryptocurrency, artificial intelligence, and the geopolitical implications of memes. But right now, he's just a guy with money who thinks electric cars might be cool. The paperwork is signed in a conference room that smells like success, and the faint chemical tang of marker ink. Musk's signature is surprisingly neat for someone whose brain appears to operate at the speed of a supercomputer having an energy drink. You've just given a significant portion of your company to someone you've known for approximately 3 hours, which in startup terms is practically a long-term relationship. As he leaves, Musk mentions something about wanting to go to Mars eventually, which you interpret as the kind of casual conversation people make when they have enough money to treat interplanetary travel as a hobby. You nod politely and file this information under rich people eccentricities, rather than serious business plans that will eventually involve creating a space company and launching a car into orbit for entertainment purposes. You're standing in the same conference room 6 months later, but the atmosphere has changed from optimistic collaboration to the kind of tension usually reserved for divorce proceedings or hostage negotiations. The abstract art on the walls now seems to be judging everyone in the room, and the conference table that once symbolised possibility now feels like a neutral zone between warring factions. Elon Musk sits at one end of the table, radiating the energy of someone who's just realised that being chairman of an automotive startup involves significantly more actual automotive knowledge than he initially anticipated. You sit at the other end, clutching your coffee mug like it's a life preserver, and wondering how a meeting about production timelines turned into a philosophical debate about the fundamental nature of corporate leadership. The issue, as you understand it, is that Musk has opinions, many opinions, detailed technically specific opinions about battery chemistry, motor design, manufacturing processes, and approximately 17 other aspects of automotive engineering that he's learned about through what appears to be a combination of Wikipedia deep dives and late-night conversations with actual engineers. The motor torque curve could be optimized, he says, gesturing at charts that he's apparently memorized, and the thermal management system needs redesigning. These are reasonable suggestions delivered with the confidence of someone who's never actually built a car but has read extensively about the theory of building cars. You nod diplomatically while internally calculating how much it would cost to implement his suggestions, versus how much money he's invested, versus how much trouble it would be to find a new major investor who doesn't have strong opinions about engineering decisions. The math is complicated, but the general answer appears to be smile and nod while slowly dying inside. Marked-up Henning shifts uncomfortably in his chair, which creaks with the sound of startup dreams under pressure. He's been fielding technical questions from Musk with the patience of a kindergarten teacher explaining addition to a child who keeps asking why numbers work the way they do. The questions are intelligent, but there are many of them, and they arrive with the frequency of machine gun fire. The real tension, though, isn't about technical details, it's about control. You started this company to build electric cars. Musk invested in this company to transform global transportation. These sound like the same goal, but they're actually different in the way that having a nice dinner and revolutionizing human nutrition are different. You want to build a successful business that makes good electric vehicles and hopefully profits. Musk wants to save the world from climate change while simultaneously proving that sustainable technology can be cooler than traditional alternatives. Again, these seem compatible, but the execution involves different approaches to risk, timelines, and the acceptable probability of catastrophic failure. We need to think bigger, Musk says, pulling up presentation slides that he's apparently prepared in advance. The slides include concepts for vehicle designs that don't exist, manufacturing processes that haven't been invented, and market projections that assume Tesla will single-handedly convince the entire automotive industry to abandon internal combustion engines. The presentation is impressive in the way that science fiction is impressive, visually striking, conceptually bold, and completely disconnected from the practical realities of building actual vehicles with actual money in actual factories that exist in the real world. You listen with the expression of someone who's being shown plans for a time machine by their enthusiastic but slightly unhinged neighbour. These are interesting ideas, you say carefully, which in startup diplomacy translates to "this is insane, but you're paying the bills, so I'll pretend to consider it." You're learning that managing major investors requires skills that weren't covered in engineering school, specifically the ability to translate between what's technically possible and what someone with a lot of money wants to hear. The meeting ends with what you optimistically call continued discussion, and what everyone else recognises as a fundamental disagreement about company direction that's been temporarily postponed rather than resolved. You shake hands with the enthusiasm of people who aren't entirely sure they're still business partners. As Musk leaves, he mentions something about maybe needing more direct involvement in company operations, which sounds like an offer to help but feels like a threat to take over. You smile and nod, then immediately begin updating your LinkedIn profile, not because you're planning to leave, but because startup paranoia is a survival skill. The next morning, you arrive at the office to find that Musk has sent 17 emails overnight, containing detailed engineering suggestions, market analysis, and what appears to be a complete redesign of the Roadster's interior. You pour yourself a strong cup of coffee and wonder if there's a graceful way to uninvent time travel so you can go back and choose a simpler career, like brain surgery or nuclear physics. You're sitting in your office in August 2007, staring at an email that makes about as much sense as instructions for assembling IKEA furniture written by someone having a nervous breakdown. The subject line reads, "Board meeting, important company direction discussion," which in corporate speak translates to either routine business or "your professional execution has been scheduled for this Thursday." The email is from Elon Musk, who has apparently decided that Tesla needs new leadership direction and operational optimization, phrases that sound like business school buzzwords but feel like a polite way of saying, "You're fired, but we're going to use a lot of words to explain why this is actually good for everyone involved." You read the email 3 times, looking for hidden meanings or signs that this might be an elaborate practical joke. Unfortunately, the tone is consistently serious, the grammar is impeccable, and the meeting is scheduled for real. This suggests that your position as CEO of the company you founded is about to become significantly more theoretical. Mark Penning knocks on your door, holding a similar email and wearing the expression of someone who's just discovered that their life savings have been invested in cryptocurrency backed by monopoly money. "Did you get the thing about restructuring executive responsibilities?" he asks, which is his polite way of asking whether you've also been professionally assassinated via corporate email. You nod slowly, still processing the carefully worded sentences that manage to suggest that your departure is both inevitable and somehow your own idea. It's impressive writing, really. The kind of corporate communication that makes you feel grateful for being fired while simultaneously wondering if you should be checking your bank account and updating your resume. The board meeting is scheduled for the Tesla office, which now feels less like your company headquarters and more like the scene of an upcoming heist where you're both the victim and an unwilling participant. You arrive early, partly out of habit and partly because showing up late to your own professional funeral seems like poor etiquette. Musk arrives with a folder of documents that looks suspiciously like a prepared presentation, which suggests this meeting has been planned with the thoroughness of a military operation. He's wearing his usual black t-shirt and jeans, but today the casual outfit feels more like a uniform than relaxed attire. The company needs to scale faster, he begins, clicking through slides that chart Tesla's progress against projections that seem to have been prepared by someone who believes in magic or has access to time travel technology. The graphs are impressive, but they exist in a universe where automotive manufacturing follows the same rules as software development. The presentation covers market opportunity, competitive landscape, manufacturing challenges, and the need for visionary leadership that can execute at the speed of innovation. You listen with the growing realization that you're watching someone explain why your services are no longer required, using charts and graphs to make the argument more convincing. "Martin has done excellent work getting us to this point," Musk continues, and you recognize this as the setup for a sentence that's going to end with "but," followed by a list of reasons why excellent work is no longer sufficient. You're right. The "but" arrives with the inevitability of gravity, followed by discussions of next-level execution and scaling challenges. You're offered the position of President of Technology, which sounds important but feels like being promoted to captain of a ship that someone else is now steering. The title comes with continued involvement in technical decisions and a graceful exit from day-to-day operations, which is consultant speak for you can keep your office, but someone else will be making the actual decisions. The vote is unanimous, which suggests that either everyone genuinely believes this is the right decision, or they're all too polite to object to someone who controls the majority of the company's funding. You suspect it's a combination of both, with a heavy emphasis on the politeness motivated by financial reality. As CEO, Musk immediately begins implementing changes with the enthusiasm of someone redecorating a house they've just purchased. Production timelines are accelerated, engineering specifications are revised, and the general company culture shifts from careful startup trying not to fail to ambitious technology company that might revolutionize everything or explode trying. You clean out your desk with the dignity of someone who's been politely asked to leave a party that they originally organized. The experience is surreal. Being professionally removed from a company you created by someone who's using money he made from another company to fund his vision of transforming an industry that he learned about by investing in your company. That evening, you sit at home with a glass of wine and a head full of mixed emotions. You've just lost control of Tesla, but you've also freed yourself from the daily stress of trying to manage a major investor who treats physics more like loose guidelines than actual laws. It's either the worst thing that's ever happened to your career or the beginning of a much more relaxing chapter of your life. The news breaks quietly, without fanfare or dramatic press releases. Tesla has a new CEO, and you're still involved, but in a reduced capacity. The automotive industry barely notices because in 2007, electric car startups are still considered interesting experiments rather than serious threats to established manufacturers. What you don't know yet is that you've just handed control of Tesla to someone who will eventually launch a car into space, buy Twitter for more money than most countries' annual budgets, and become the richest person in the world while simultaneously conducting public feuds via social media platforms that didn't exist when you founded the company. You're standing on the floor of the Tesla Gigafactory in Nevada in early 2018, surrounded by the sound of industrial machinery having what can only be described as a mechanical nervous breakdown. The air smells like heated metal, industrial lubricants, and the distinctive aroma of ambitious deadlines meeting stubborn reality. Around you, partially assembled Model 3 vehicles sit in various stages of completion, like an automotive assembly line designed by someone who learned manufacturing from YouTube videos. The factory floor stretches out before you like a technological cathedral, filled with robotic arms that move with a precise choreography of ballet dancers who've never actually practiced together. Some robots are installing batteries with millimetre precision, others are trying to attach doors to vehicles that may or may not be in the correct position to receive doors, and a few appear to be performing interpretive dance pieces about the futility of mass production. You're Elon Musk, and you've just realised that building 5,000 Model 3 vehicles per week is significantly more complicated than building rockets to Mars. This revelation hits you with the force of someone discovering that their ambitious home renovation project actually requires knowledge of structural engineering, electrical systems, and the local building code. The Model 3 was supposed to be Tesla's breakthrough into mass-market manufacturing. An affordable electric car that would prove sustainable transportation could be produced at scale without compromising on performance or style. The pre-orders were incredible, the deposit checks cleared, and the press coverage was overwhelmingly positive. What nobody anticipated was that designing a car and actually building thousands of them are different skills, like the difference between drawing blueprints and performing surgery. Your phone buzzes with another text from the production team reporting this week's numbers. You're currently manufacturing approximately 2,000 vehicles per week, which sounds impressive until you remember that you promised customers 5,000 per week, investors 10,000 per week, and yourself some number that probably violates the laws of physics. The bottleneck, as you understand it, is everywhere. Battery production is limited by chemistry, and the speed at which lithium-ion cells can be safely assembled without creating devices that explode. Body panel manufacturing is constrained by the precision required to make pieces of metal fit together without gaps that whistle when you drive. Final assembly depends on human workers who need to eat, sleep, and occasionally take bathroom breaks. Biological requirements that seem designed to slow down production. You walk past a section where workers are hand-finishing details that were supposed to be automated, using tools that look like they were borrowed from an art studio rather than an automotive factory. The work is meticulous, beautiful, and absolutely incompatible with mass production timelines. It's like watching master craftsmen create bespoke furniture when what you actually need is IKEA-level efficiency. The robotics, which seemed like a brilliant solution during the planning phase, have revealed personalities as temperamental as artists. Some machines work perfectly for hours, then suddenly decide that installing seat belts is philosophically incompatible with their programming. Others perform their tasks flawlessly, but at speeds that suggest they're being very thoughtful about each movement. Your engineering team approaches with the cautious demeanour of people delivering bad news to someone who's known for strong emotional reactions to disappointment. They're carrying tablets and clipboards filled with data that probably explains exactly why production targets exist, in the realm of theoretical possibility rather than actual achievement. We're optimizing the workflow, one engineer explains, showing you charts that track efficiency improvements measured in fractions of percentage points. The graphs are encouraging in the sense that they're pointing upward, but discouraging in the sense that reaching your targets at this rate would require several decades of continuous optimization. You nod thoughtfully while internally calculating whether it would be faster to rebuild the entire factory or to manually assemble vehicles in your garage using hand tools and determination. The math is closer than it should be. Meanwhile, your phone continues buzzing with notifications from various social media platforms, financial news outlets, and reporters who want to know when Tesla will hit its production targets. The questions arrive with the persistence of mosquitoes and approximately the same level of welcome. You ignore them, partly because you're busy solving manufacturing problems, and partly because you don't have answers that won't cause stock prices to fluctuate in directions that make investors nervous. The irony isn't lost on you that building electric cars to save the world from climate change has temporarily turned your life into a climate of constant stress, sleep deprivation, and existential questioning about whether you've bitten off more than any reasonable person could chew. But reasonable people, you remind yourself, don't usually try to revolutionize multiple industries simultaneously. You wake up on an office couch that wasn't designed for sleeping. unless the designer's goal was to create furniture that actively punishes anyone who attempts to rest upon it. Your back issues a formal complaint as you sit up, and your neck joins the protest with a sharp reminder that office furniture and human anatomy are fundamentally incompatible concepts. It's 4 a.m, and through the windows of your Fremont factory office, you can see the production line still running, lit by fluorescent lights that give everything the colour temperature of a medical emergency. You've been sleeping at the factory for 3 weeks now, not because you can't afford a hotel, but because leaving feels like abandoning ship during a storm that you're personally responsible for creating. Your phone screen lights up with 47 unread messages, 23 missed calls, and approximately 300 social media notifications that range from supportive to concerned to actively hostile. The Tesla stock price has been fluctuating with the volatility of a mood ring attached to a caffeine addict, and financial journalists are treating every production update like breaking news from a natural disaster. You check the overnight production numbers, hoping that the manufacturing gods have finally decided to smile upon your efforts. The report shows modest progress. 2,400 vehicles completed this week, which is technically an improvement, but still feels like trying to fill a swimming pool with a teaspoon. The math suggests you're on track to hit your target sometime around the heat death of the universe. Your assistant appears with coffee that smells like industrial strength optimism and tastes like liquefied determination. She's been managing your schedule with the diplomatic skills of a UN peacekeeping force, fielding calls from investors, reporters, suppliers, and occasionally your own family members who've started to wonder if you've been kidnapped by automotive machinery. The production meeting is in an hour, she reminds you, which means you have approximately 60 minutes to transform from a sleep-deprived factory vagrant into a confident CEO who definitely has everything under control and isn't slowly losing his mind over transmission tunnel assembly bottlenecks. You shower in the executive bathroom, which has been converted into a makeshift living space complete with toiletries, a change of clothes, and a growing collection of energy drinks that fuel your attempts to solve engineering problems through sheer force of will and caffeine consumption. The mirror reflects someone who looks like they've been conducting a long-term experiment in stress tolerance and sleep deprivation. Your eyes have the slightly wild look of someone who's been staring at production charts until the numbers start moving on their own, and your hair suggests that automotive manufacturing is not compatible with regular grooming schedules. You walk through the factory floor, observing the morning shift change with the intensity of someone watching a military operation. Workers clock in with the purposeful movements of people who understand that every minute of production matters, even if the overall timeline still seems to exist in a parallel universe where physics works differently. The Model 3 assembly line stretches out before you, like a mechanical symphony that's still learning how to play in tune. Some sections operate with smooth efficiency. Others require constant attention from technicians who approach each problem with the patience of people fixing antique clockwork. The robots have developed distinct personalities, some reliable, others temperamental, and a few that seem to be conducting their own experiments in creative interpretation of assembly instructions. Your phone buzzes with a Twitter notification. Someone has posted a photo of themselves waiting outside a Tesla store, asking when their Model 3 will be delivered. The image includes a sign counting days since their order was placed, currently displaying a number that makes you feel personally responsible for their disappointment. You consider responding with technical details about production scaling, battery chemistry, and manufacturing optimization. Then realize that explaining why things are taking longer probably won't make people feel better about waiting longer for things they've already paid for. Instead, you compose a tweet about how manufacturing is harder than it looks, which seems both obviously true and completely inadequate as an explanation for why revolutionizing the automotive industry is taking slightly longer than originally anticipated. The production meeting begins with charts, graphs, and statistical analysis that explains exactly how much progress has been made and how much work remains. The data is simultaneously encouraging and depressing, clear evidence of improvement combined with mathematical proof that your original timelines were created by someone who believed in magic rather than manufacturing. You listen to updates from different departments, each reporting challenges that sound like they should have solutions but apparently don't. Battery pack assembly is limited by thermal management issues. Body panel alignment requires precision that conflicts with speed. Quality control standards designed to ensure customer satisfaction are incompatible with production targets designed to ensure company survival. The meeting ends with revised projections that push target numbers further into the future, which feels like watching your deadlines slowly migrate toward the horizon like automotive mirages. You nod thoughtfully and pretend that this is all part of a carefully orchestrated plan, rather than an elaborate exercise in industrial problem-solving through trial and error. You're sitting in your Model S in the parking lot of the Fremont factory at 12:48 p.m. on August 7th, 2018, staring at your phone like it's a weapon that might discharge accidentally. The California sun beats down through the windshield, and the interior smells like leather seats and the particular brand of anxiety that comes from being the CEO of a publicly traded company with strong opinions about everything. Your thumbs hover over the Twitter keyboard as you contemplate a message that will either be remembered as brilliant market communication or catastrophic financial self-sabotage. There's really no middle ground when you're about to announce that you're considering taking Tesla private at $420 per share, funded secured, in exactly 280 characters. The idea isn't completely insane, which might actually make it more dangerous than complete insanity. You've been talking to investors, including some very serious people from Saudi Arabia who have access to sovereign wealth funds and an apparent interest in diversifying their economy beyond petroleum products. The irony of funding an electric car company with oil money isn't lost on you, but irony doesn't disqualify investment capital. Your phone buzzes with production updates, stock price alerts, and the usual collection of social media notifications that accompany being one of the most followed CEOs on platforms designed for sharing photos of food and opinions about celebrity relationships. The stock price has been fluctuating like a seismograph during an earthquake, responding to production numbers, analyst reports, and your previous tweets with the volatility of a chemistry experiment conducted by caffeinated teenagers. Taking Tesla private would solve several problems, starting with the constant scrutiny from investors who seem to believe that quarterly earnings reports should reflect progress toward long-term goals, rather than the messy reality of building a sustainable automotive company from scratch. Public markets, you've discovered, are not particularly tolerant of the kind of patient capital required to revolutionize industries. You type the tweet, "I'm considering taking Tesla private at $420, funding secured." The message sits in the composition window like a financial grenade with the pin pulled, waiting for you to decide whether to throw it or carefully put it back in a safe place where it can't hurt anyone. The $420 price isn't random. It represents roughly a 20% premium over current trading levels, which seems fair for shareholders while also being sufficiently attractive to discourage short sellers who've been betting against Tesla with the enthusiasm of people who genuinely believe electric cars are a passing fad. You hit send without the careful consideration that future securities lawyers will suggest should have accompanied such a market-moving announcement. The tweet disappears into the internet with the finality of decisions that can't be undone, like marriage proposals or telling your boss what you really think about their management style. Within minutes, your phone begins buzzing with the intensity of a device receiving emergency broadcast alerts. The Tesla stock price jumps immediately, trading halts kick in, and financial news networks begin interrupting their regular programming to discuss what you've just announced. CNBC analysts appear on screen with the expression of people trying to explain a natural disaster they didn't see coming. Your phone rings. It's your head of investor relations, calling with the tone of someone who's just discovered that their house is on fire and they may have left the stove on. "Elon," she says carefully, "we need to talk about the private company announcement. The SEC is probably going to have questions." This is the moment when you realise that funding secured might require more documentation than a handshake, and some encouraging conversations with people who have access to large amounts of money. Securities regulations, it turns out, have very specific requirements about what constitutes secured funding versus optimistic discussions about potential funding. Meanwhile, Twitter explodes with reactions ranging from celebration to conspiracy theories, to detailed financial analysis of what taking Tesla private might mean for the electric vehicle industry. Some investors are thrilled, others are confused, and a few are already calculating whether this announcement represents market manipulation or just unusually direct CEO communication. Your legal team begins calling with the frequency of people who've just realised they're going to be working very late for the next several months. Securities law, they explain with barely contained panic, requires a certain level of precision when announcing major corporate actions that affect stock prices. Funding secured apparently needs to be more secure than probably secured if things work out. The Saudi investment discussions were real but preliminary, the kind of high-level conversations that might lead to funding rather than the finalised agreements that securities regulations prefer to see before public announcements. You've essentially announced a conclusion to negotiations that are still in progress, which is like sending wedding invitations before you've proposed. By the end of the day, Tesla's stock has gained billions in market value, financial regulators have opened investigations, and you've accidentally created a case study in how social media can transform corporate communications from careful press releases into real-time stream-of-consciousness broadcasting. That evening you sit in your factory office, wondering whether you've just solved Tesla's funding problems or created entirely new categories of legal complications. Your phone continues buzzing with calls from lawyers, investors, reporters, and probably a few people who just want to know if you're feeling okay. You're scrolling through Twitter at 2:17 a.m. on April 14, 2022, lying in bed and probably suffering from the kind of insomnia that affects people who've spent the day thinking about rocket trajectories, electric vehicle production targets, and the philosophical implications of free speech on digital platforms. Your phone screen casts a blue glow that suggests you should probably be sleeping instead of engaging in social media activities that will later require explanation to various boards of directors and securities regulators. The tweet that catches your attention is a complaint about Twitter's content moderation policies, posted by someone whose opinion about social media governance you find either compelling or irritating enough to warrant a response. You're Elon Musk, you own approximately 9% of Twitter's stock, and you've been publicly criticising the platform's approach to free speech with the consistency of someone who has strong opinions and a very large platform for expressing them. Your thumbs hover over the keyboard as you contemplate whether to compose a measured response about the complexities of content moderation in digital spaces, or to do something characteristically impulsive that will dominate news cycles for the next several months. The decision, as it turns out, is easier than choosing between reasonable public discourse and whatever the opposite of that might be. You compose an offer to buy Twitter for $54.20 per share, cash, which values the company at approximately $44 billion and represents the kind of financial commitment that most people make when purchasing houses or cars, not when acquiring social media platforms during late-night scrolling sessions. The price isn't entirely random. It represents a significant premium over current market value, which should make shareholders happy, while also being high enough to discourage competing offers from people who might have different ideas about how social media platforms should operate. You've essentially made an offer that's difficult to refuse for financial reasons and impossible to ignore for practical ones. You submit the offer with the casual approach of someone ordering takeout food, rather than someone proposing to acquire one of the world's most influential communications platforms. The paperwork gets filed with the SEC, which means your late-night social media impulse has officially become a legally binding corporate action that will require months of due diligence, regulatory approval, and explanations to people who ask reasonable questions about your motivations. The announcement hits financial markets like a caffeinated hurricane. Twitter's stock price jumps immediately. Tesla's stock price fluctuates in directions that suggest investors aren't entirely sure how to price the risk of their CEO acquiring additional companies to manage, and financial analysts begin preparing reports about what this might mean for everything from free speech to space exploration. Your phone begins buzzing with calls from lawyers, investment bankers, board members, and journalists who want to know whether this offer is serious or an elaborate form of performance art designed to critique contemporary social media governance. The answer, as you explain to increasingly concerned advisors, is both. The due diligence process reveals Twitter's operations in the kind of detail usually reserved for medical examinations or criminal investigations. You discover that the platform has more employees than you initially expected, more complicated technical infrastructure than seems necessary, and content moderation policies that appear to have been designed by a committee of philosophers who couldn't agree on the definition of harmful speech. Meanwhile, Twitter's board responds to your offer with the enthusiasm of people who've just been asked to sell their house to someone who plans to renovate it in ways they might not personally approve of. They implement a poison pill defense strategy, which sounds medical but actually refers to financial maneuvers designed to make hostile takeovers prohibitively expensive. Legal teams from both companies begin engaging in negotiations that resemble diplomatic discussions between countries that don't entirely trust each other's intentions. Your lawyers explain Twitter's corporate structure. Twitter's lawyers explain your obligations as a potential acquirer, and everyone involved begins generating billable hours that could fund small universities. The media coverage ranges from analytical to sensational to completely speculative. Some reporters treat the acquisition as a logical business development. Others frame it as a billionaire's attempt to control public discourse, and a few suggest it might be an elaborate publicity stunt designed to manipulate stock prices for reasons that remain unclear. You spend the next several weeks answering questions about your plans for Twitter's future, which is challenging because you're still figuring out what those plans might be. Your public statements range from confident assertions about improving the platform to admissions that social media governance is more complicated than rocket science, which is saying something considering you actually build rockets for a living. By the time the acquisition closes in October 2022, you've committed to spending more money than most countries' annual budgets to own a platform that you've publicly criticised for years. The transaction makes you the owner of Twitter, responsible for its operations, liable for its debts, and accountable for its impact on global communications, which is either the logical next step in your career or evidence that even very successful people can make decisions that seem completely insane in retrospect. You're sitting in Twitter's San Francisco headquarters at 3:22 a.m. on October 28th, 2022, surrounded by the kind of corporate office furniture that suggests the previous management team believed beige was a lifestyle choice rather than just a colour. The building smells like industrial carpet, leftover conference room coffee, and the particular anxiety that accompanies organisational change implemented at the speed of someone who believes bureaucracy is a disease that can be cured through aggressive action. Your first official act as Twitter's new owner was to change your bio to Chief Twit, which seemed funny at the time and now feels like either brilliant personal branding or evidence that acquiring social media companies affects judgment in ways that aren't immediately obvious. You're carrying a sink through the lobby, literally carrying a bathroom fixture, because you want to let that sink in. A pun so aggressive it would make dad joke enthusiasts weep with either joy or despair. The Twitter employees watch you with the expression of people who've just discovered their new boss is either a comedy genius or having some kind of public breakdown involving plumbing metaphors. Their faces suggest they're leaning toward the breakdown theory, which is understandable considering you've just spent $44 billion to acquire a company so you could make puns with bathroom fixtures. Within hours of taking control, you begin what can only be described as the world's most expensive organisational restructuring experiment. Your approach to Twitter's workforce resembles someone who's decided that the best way to renovate a house is to remove most of the walls and see what happens. The results are about as structurally sound as you'd expect. You send out an email to all Twitter employees with the subject line, "A fork in the road," which sounds either inspirational or like the beginning of a very expensive horror movie. The email explains that Twitter will need to be extremely hardcore going forward, requiring employees to work long hours at high intensity. This is corporate speak for, I've bought a social media platform and I'm about to treat it like a startup that needs to prove itself, even though it's been operating for over a decade. The email includes a link to a Google form, where employees must click yes to commit to the new hardcore Twitter culture, or receive 3 months of severance pay. It's essentially a digital ultimatum delivered via the most passive-aggressive medium possible, a Google form that looks like it was designed by someone who learned user interface design from 1990s tax software. Employees have until 5 p.m. the next day to decide whether they want to remain part of your vision for Twitter 2.0 or take their severance and flee to companies that don't require bathroom fixture-based comedy to demonstrate corporate philosophy. The deadline feels less like a reasonable timeline for major life decisions and more like a game show where the prize is either job security or the sweet relief of escape. By the time the deadline arrives, approximately 1,200 employees have chosen the severance option, which represents roughly 15% of Twitter's workforce deciding they'd rather take their chances in the job market than see what extremely hardcore means in practice. This is either a reasonable business decision or evidence that your management style inspires the same confidence as a pilot announcing mid-flight that they've decided to try some experimental landing techniques. The employees who remain discover that hardcore Twitter involves sleeping in the office, working through weekends, and participating in what can only be described as organisational chaos therapy. The Twitter offices begin to resemble a tech startup cosplaying as a graduate school all-nighter, complete with sleeping bags, empty energy drink cans, and the distinctive smell of people who've been debugging code for 72 consecutive hours. Meanwhile, your Twitter account becomes a real-time documentary of someone learning to run a social media platform by doing it in public. Your tweets range from technical discussions about platform architecture to memes about your own management decisions, creating a communication style that's either refreshingly transparent or evidence that social media ownership affects judgment in ways that should probably be studied by researchers. The engineering teams discover that your approach to software development involves personally reviewing code commits and making suggestions based on first principles thinking, which is either inspiring evidence of hands-on leadership or terrifying proof that the person who owns the platform is also trying to personally optimize its code base during late-night coding sessions. You're staring at your laptop screen at 2:47 a.m. on November 9th, 2022, contemplating what might be either your most brilliant business innovation or your most expensive mistake involving small blue symbols. The verification checkmark, that tiny azure badge that Twitter users have spent years coveting, pleading for, and occasionally threatening violence to obtain, is about to become an $8 monthly subscription service. The original verification system was Twitter's attempt to solve the problem of impersonation by confirming that notable accounts actually belong to the people they claimed to represent. Celebrities, politicians, journalists, and other public figures received blue check marks after going through a verification process that resembled applying for a passport in a country that really doesn't want you to travel. Your brilliant insight is that verification shouldn't be reserved for people who are already famous. It should be available to anyone willing to pay $8 per month for the privilege of having a small blue symbol next to their name. This is either democratic innovation or evidence that you've discovered a way to monetize human vanity at a scale that would make medieval indulgence sellers jealous. The announcement goes about as well as you'd expect a plan to completely reimagine social media verification to go, which is to say, it immediately creates chaos that would be impressive if it weren't so expensive. Within hours of launching Twitter Blue verification, the platform becomes a wild west of impersonation, satire, and performance art involving small blue symbols. Someone creates a verified account for Nintendo and tweets that Mario is dead. Another verified account claiming to represent pharmaceutical company Eli Lilly announces that insulin is now free, causing the actual company's stock price to fluctuate before they can issue corrections. A verified Tesla account that isn't actually Tesla announces the company is now accepting payments in Dogecoin for all vehicles, which is either satire or an accurate representation of your usual business communications. The chaos multiplies exponentially as verified accounts impersonating major brands begin tweeting increasingly absurd announcements. A fake McDonald's account declares that all burgers will now be served with ice cream. A fake Apple account announces the immediate discontinuation of the iPhone. A fake Nike account proclaims that all shoes will now be free, but only on Wednesdays, and only if customers can successfully complete a TikTok dance. You watch this unfold with the expression of someone who's just realized that democratizing verification symbols might have unintended consequences involving global brand confusion and potential securities fraud. The impersonation tweets are simultaneously hilarious and legally terrifying, creating a real-time experiment in what happens when the internet's capacity for creative mischief meets corporate trademark law. Major advertisers begin pulling their campaigns from Twitter, not because they object to your ownership philosophically, but because their brands are being impersonated by verified accounts, announcing fictional product recalls, imaginary mergers, and occasionally declarations of war against competing companies. The advertising exodus resembles a polite stampede, where everyone is leaving calmly but quickly. Your response to this crisis involves implementing what can only be described as verification, a system where accounts can be verified, but then also official, creating multiple tiers of authenticity that require colour-coded badges to distinguish. The complexity rivals tax law, and the implementation resembles someone trying to fix a leak by adding more pipes. Within days, you pause the launch of paid verification, then resume it with modifications, then pause it again, creating a cycle of changes that makes Twitter's verification system resemble a social media experiment being conducted in real time by someone learning the platform's sociology through trial and very public error. The blue checkmark saga becomes a case study in how small changes to social media platforms can have enormous consequences, and how democratizing status symbols sometimes results in everyone realizing that status symbols might not have been as important as they thought. But mostly, it becomes a very expensive lesson in the difference between theoretical business models and their practical implementation on platforms used by millions of people who have strong opinions about small blue symbols. You're standing in Twitter's headquarters at 11:43 p.m. on July 23rd, 2023, watching workers remove the iconic bluebird logo from the building's exterior with the methodical efficiency of people performing corporate surgery. The bird that has represented Twitter for over a decade is being replaced with a stark minimalist X that looks like it was designed by someone who believes letters should be architectural statements rather than just alphabetic symbols. The rebranding from Twitter to X represents what might be either the boldest corporate transformation in social media history or the most expensive exercise in nostalgia for a letter you've been obsessed with since founding X.com back in 1999. Your fascination with the letter X resembles someone who discovered a particularly attractive piece of typography and decided to build an entire business empire around it. The transformation begins with an email to Twitter employees, now X-employees, explaining that the bird is dead and the platform is now X, the everything app. This announcement has the tone of someone declaring that they've decided to renovate their house by removing the roof and replacing it with a skylight that covers the entire structure. Ambitious, certainly, but potentially catastrophic if it rains. Your vision for X extends far beyond social media into payments, banking, shopping, and essentially every digital service that requires an internet connection. The plan resembles WeChat, China's super app that handles everything from messaging to mobile payments, except implemented by someone who learned about Chinese tech platforms from PowerPoint presentations and believes American users will embrace comprehensive digital ecosystems with the same enthusiasm they show for assembling IKEA furniture. The rebranding process involves not just changing logos, but rewiring the entire platform's identity. Tweets become posts, retweets become reposts, and the bird emoji gets replaced with X in a font that looks like it was designed by mathematicians who took a typography class and decided that letters should resemble equations. X-employees, adapt to the changes with the flexibility of people who've learned that working for you requires maintaining the emotional equilibrium of someone surfing during an earthquake. They implement the rebrand while simultaneously trying to maintain platform stability, which is like performing surgery while the patient is running a marathon. The user response to the rebrand ranges from confused acceptance to nostalgic mourning for the deceased bird. Some users continue calling it Twitter out of habit, others embrace the X terminology with the enthusiasm of early adopters, and a significant portion seem to be using the platform primarily to complain about the platform no longer being called Twitter. Major media outlets face the linguistic challenge of reporting on a platform that no longer uses the name it's been known by for over a decade. Headlines begin including phrases like X, formerly Twitter, and the platform formerly known as Twitter, creating a naming convention that makes the platform sound like it's in witness protection. The rebrand also creates technical challenges, as changing a platform's fundamental identity involves updating millions of lines of code, redirecting web addresses, and modifying systems that have been optimized for Twitter functionality for over a decade. It's like deciding to change your name and then realizing you need to update every legal document, bank account, and social media profile you've ever created. Your personal Twitter account becomes an X, which is either the ultimate username flex or evidence that you've achieved the social media equivalent of a single-name celebrity status. The account bio simply reads X, which is either minimalist branding genius or the digital equivalent of someone whose email signature is just their initial. The financial implications of killing the Twitter brand are staggering. Brand consultants estimate the Twitter name and bird logo were worth billions in brand recognition and cultural cash. You've essentially taken one of the internet's most recognizable brands and replaced it with a letter that looks like it should be followed by marks the spot. But perhaps most remarkably, you've managed to rebrand a social media platform while it's being actively used by hundreds of millions of people, which is like changing the name of a highway while traffic is still driving on it. The transition is messy, confusing, and occasionally breaks things, but somehow the platform continues functioning while undergoing this fundamental identity transformation. You're sitting in a conference room that still smells faintly like the Twitter logo removal process, staring at advertising revenue charts that look like they were drawn by someone documenting a controlled demolition. The numbers don't just decline, they plummet with the enthusiasm of objects responding to gravity after being dropped from great heights. The advertiser exodus from X begins almost immediately after your acquisition, but accelerates to terminal velocity after a series of events that can only be described as a masterclass in how to alienate corporate marketing departments. It starts with your approach to content moderation, which you describe as free speech absolutism, and advertisers describe as brand safety nightmare. Your philosophy of allowing more speech on the platform sounds noble in principle, but in practice means that ads for family-friendly products might appear next to content that would make corporate compliance officers require therapy. Major brands discover their advertisements displayed alongside posts that range from merely controversial to actively hostile, creating associations that make their marketing teams consider career changes. The situation escalates when you personally engage in what can charitably be called provocative discourse on the platform you own. Your tweets begin including commentary on political topics, conspiracy theories, and occasionally direct responses to criticism that demonstrate the kind of unfiltered authenticity that makes PR professionals drink heavily during business hours. Disney, Apple, IBM, and other major advertisers begin pulling their campaigns with the polite efficiency of dinner guests leaving a party that's gotten uncomfortably weird. They don't necessarily announce their departures with dramatic statements. They simply stop spending money on X advertising, creating a quiet exodus that shows up in revenue reports like digital tumbleweeds. Your response to the advertiser flight involves what might be either brilliant reverse psychology or catastrophic business strategy. At a public event, you tell advertisers who are concerned about brand safety to go for selling themselves, specifically calling out Disney CEO Bob Iger by name. This approach to customer retention resembles someone trying to win back an ex-partner by insulting them at a public venue. The "go for cows yourself" comment becomes a viral moment that demonstrates either refreshing CEO authenticity or complete abandonment of conventional business diplomacy. It's the kind of statement that gets replayed on news shows and transforms into memes, but probably doesn't improve quarterly advertising revenue projections. Linda Yaccarino, the former NBC Universal advertising executive you hired as X's CEO, finds herself in the position of trying to reassure major brands that the platform is advertiser-friendly, while her boss publicly tells advertisers to go fuck themselves. This represents either the ultimate challenge for advertising industry veterans or evidence that some jobs are more difficult than others. The advertiser concerns aren't entirely about your personal statements. They're also about the platform's content moderation policies under your ownership. The decision to reinstate previously banned accounts and reduce content restrictions creates an environment where brand safety becomes genuinely challenging to guarantee. Major advertising agencies begin advising their clients to pause X campaigns until the platform's direction becomes clearer, which is corporate speak for "let's wait and see if this gets less chaotic before we spend our clients' money here." The agencies approach X advertising with the caution of people considering whether to vacation in an active volcano zone. Small and medium-sized advertisers also begin reconsidering their X spending, not necessarily because they object to your management style, but because advertising effectiveness depends on audience engagement, and platform chaos tends to distract from commercial messages. It's hard to sell products when users are primarily focused on debating platform policy changes. The financial impact is substantial. Advertising revenue reportedly drops by approximately 50% in the months following your acquisition, transforming X from a profitable advertising platform into an expensive experiment in alternative social media economics. You've essentially converted a money-making machine into a very costly laboratory for testing theories about free speech and platform governance. Your solution to the advertising revenue problem involves exploring subscription models, creator monetization programs, and eventually direct user payments for platform features. It's either innovative diversification away from advertising dependence, or evidence that sometimes the best way to solve business problems is to fundamentally change the nature of the business. You're coding at 4:17 a.m. in your makeshift office bedroom at X headquarters, surrounded by energy drink cans and the determined optimism of someone who believes they can reinvent digital commerce by sheer force of will and caffeine consumption. The vision for X as the everything app isn't just about social media, it's about creating a Western version of WeChat where users can message, shop, bank, and potentially order dinner without ever leaving the platform. The transformation plan involves integrating payments, shopping, video calling, dating, job searching, news reading, and essentially every digital service that currently requires switching between different apps. It's either the future of integrated digital experiences or evidence that platform ambition can expand beyond the boundaries of practical implementation. Your fascination with WeChat's success in China drives much of this vision. WeChat users can send messages, pay bills, order food, book transportation, invest money, and conduct business meetings all within a single app. The integration is so complete that many Chinese users spend their entire digital lives within WeChat's ecosystem, which sounds either incredibly convenient or mildly dystopian, depending on your perspective regarding digital monopolies. The technical challenges of building an everything app involve essentially reconstructing the internet within a single platform. Users would need X accounts that handle their social media, banking information, shopping preferences, and personal communications, creating a level of data integration that makes privacy advocates contemplate career changes in offline industries. Your approach to payments integration involves applying for money transmitter licenses in various states, a process that involves convincing financial regulators that a social media platform can be trusted with people's bank account information. The regulatory conversations presumably involve explaining why someone should store their money with the same company, where they argue about politics with strangers. The dating feature integration represents an attempt to combine social media networking with romantic matchmaking, creating opportunities for users to slide into DMS that are also potential relationship foundations. This could either revolutionize online dating or create new categories of social media awkwardness when professional networking overlaps with romantic interests. Video calling capabilities would allow X users to conduct business meetings, family conversations, and social calls without switching to Zoom, FaceTime, or other dedicated communication platforms. The challenge involves building video infrastructure that can handle millions of simultaneous calls while maintaining the platform's primary social media functions. Shopping integration aims to allow users to browse products, compare prices, and make purchases without leaving X, essentially turning every social media post into potential commercial content. Influencers could sell products directly through their posts, creating a seamless transition from social media marketing to actual commerce. The job search functionality would transform X into a professional networking platform that competes with LinkedIn while maintaining its social media character. Users could network professionally, apply for positions, and conduct interviews within the same app where they share memes and debate current events. News integration involves partnering with media outlets to deliver personalized news feeds that adapt to user interests and engagement patterns. The goal is creating a single destination for both breaking news and social discussion about breaking news, potentially making X the primary information source for its users. The Everything app vision requires convincing users to trust a single platform with their financial information, personal communications, professional networking, entertainment, and news consumption. This level of digital integration could either create unprecedented convenience or concerning dependence on a single tech platform controlled by one person. Your coding sessions at X headquarters reportedly involve personally reviewing and modifying the platform's underlying architecture to support these expanded functionalities. It's either inspiring hands-on leadership or concerning evidence that the person making strategic decisions is also debugging code at 4 a.m. while surviving on energy drinks and ambition. The timeline for achieving Everything app status remains optimistic. You've suggested that X could become a comprehensive digital ecosystem within a few years, which is either realistic goal setting or evidence that platform development timelines can be influenced by the same optimism that drives space exploration and electric vehicle production targets. You're scrolling through X at 1:33 a.m. on a Tuesday in late 2023, crafting tweets that will either be analysed by political scientists or used as evidence that social media ownership affects judgment in ways that should be studied by medical professionals. Your transformation from tech entrepreneur to political commentator happens gradually, then suddenly, like bankruptcy, or the realization that you've accidentally become the main character in every internet argument. The political awakening begins innocuously enough, a few tweets questioning mainstream media narratives, some commentary on government efficiency, occasional observations about free speech. But like someone who starts with a single potato chip and ends up eating the entire bag, your political engagement escalates from occasional commentary to full-time culture war participation. Your tweets begin covering topics ranging from immigration policy to vaccine mandates to the geopolitical implications of international conflicts. Each post generates thousands of replies, retweets, and quote tweets, creating discussions that resemble digital town halls hosted by someone who owns the town hall and occasionally takes the microphone to share personal opinions about municipal planning. The red pill moment, a reference to the matrix that has been adopted by various political movements, becomes your shorthand for describing a shift from mainstream liberal positions to more conservative viewpoints. You begin describing your political evolution as a journey from supporting democratic candidates to questioning progressive orthodoxy, which either represents genuine intellectual growth or the most expensive midlife crisis in social media history. Your political commentary attracts attention from media outlets that begin analysing your tweets with the intensity usually reserved for Supreme Court decisions or peace treaty negotiations. Every post gets dissected for deeper meaning, political implications, and potential impact on your various business ventures. You've accidentally become a one-person political science case study. The shift creates fascinating dynamics within your business empire. Tesla customers include many environmentally conscious consumers who traditionally align with liberal politics, while your increasingly conservative social media presence creates potential brand conflicts. You're simultaneously selling electric vehicles to people who care about climate change, while tweeting viewpoints that might alienate those same customers. Your political commentary also affects SpaceX, particularly regarding NASA contracts and government relationships. Space exploration depends heavily on federal funding and regulatory approval, creating potential complications when the person running the company regularly criticizes government policies and officials on social media. The international implications multiply as your tweets about global conflicts generate responses from world leaders, diplomats, and foreign policy experts. Your opinion about the Russia-Ukraine conflict shared via Twitter becomes actual news that gets reported by international media outlets and potentially influences public discourse about ongoing wars. Your approach to political discussion resembles someone who's decided that the best way to participate in democracy is to share every political thought in real time with millions of followers. The transparency is either refreshing authenticity or evidence that some thoughts might benefit from additional consideration before being shared with global audiences. The political pivot also creates internal challenges at X, as employees navigate working for someone whose political views are constantly generating controversy. Some embrace your authentic self-expression, others focus on their technical work while ignoring the political commentary, and a few decide that working for politically outspoken CEOs isn't compatible with their personal comfort levels. Your political engagement attracts both passionate supporters who appreciate your willingness to challenge conventional wisdom, and fierce critics who argue that tech billionaires shouldn't use their platforms for political advocacy. The debates about your influence create meta-discussions about the role of social media ownership in democratic discourse. The transformation from politically neutral tech entrepreneur to active political commentator represents either an evolution toward authentic self-expression, or evidence that acquiring social media platforms might influence users' behaviour in unexpected ways, including the users who own the platforms. You're reading an email at 3:22 a.m. from the European Commission that uses the kind of formal diplomatic language usually reserved for international incidents, except this time the international incident involves your social media platform and its approach to content moderation. The Digital Services Act isn't just a regulatory framework. It's Europe's attempt to make American tech platforms comply with European values, whether American tech platforms want to or not. The European Union's response to your X transformation resembles a passive-aggressive intervention conducted through legislative procedures and regulatory enforcement actions. They're not directly telling you how to run your platform, but they are creating legal frameworks that make certain operational choices prohibitively expensive or technically illegal within EU jurisdiction. The Digital Services Act requires platforms with more than 45 million monthly active users in the EU to implement comprehensive content moderation systems, transparency reporting, and risk mitigation measures. These requirements sound reasonable until you realise they essentially mandate the kind of extensive moderation infrastructure you've been systematically dismantling since acquiring Twitter. Your approach to compliance involves what can charitably be described as creative interpretation of regulatory requirements. Instead of rebuilding comprehensive moderation systems, you explore technical solutions like geofencing content restrictions to specific jurisdictions, creating different versions of X for different regulatory environments. The European regulators respond to your compliance strategies with the patience of teachers dealing with a student who consistently finds loopholes in assignment requirements while technically following instructions. They begin issuing formal warnings, investigation notices, and eventually fines that start small but escalate according to mathematical formulas designed to be financially persuasive. Brazil presents additional complications when Supreme Court Justice Alexandre de Moraes orders X to block certain accounts accused of spreading misinformation. Your response involves refusing to comply with the blocking orders, arguing that they violate free speech principles. This creates a jurisdictional conflict that resembles a digital sovereignty dispute conducted through legal filings and platform policy statements. The Brazilian government responds by threatening to block X access throughout the country, creating a standoff that resembles international diplomacy, except conducted through social media platforms and court orders. You must choose between complying with content blocking requests or potentially losing access to one of your largest international markets. India introduces its own complications through the information technology rules, which require platforms to remove content within specific timeframes when ordered by government authorities. Your commitment to free speech absolutism conflicts with regulatory requirements that can result in platform bans if not followed precisely. The Australian government revives discussions about media bargaining codes that would require platforms to pay publishers for news content. Your position on paying for news links creates potential conflicts with Australian regulatory frameworks designed to support domestic media industries. Canada's Online Safety Act proposes similar content moderation requirements with enforcement mechanisms that include significant financial penalties. The cumulative effect of multiple countries implementing similar but slightly different regulatory frameworks creates a compliance matrix that resembles international tax law administered by people who don't particularly like your approach to platform governance. Your legal teams begin resembling a small United Nations, with specialists in European data protection law, Brazilian free speech regulations, Indian IT compliance, Australian media law, and Canadian online safety frameworks. The complexity of international platform governance makes rocket engineering seem straightforward by comparison. The regulatory challenges create operational difficulties as X must simultaneously operate as a global platform while complying with dozens of different national and regional legal frameworks. Some content might be legal in the United States but illegal in Germany, creating technical challenges for platform architecture designed around universal content policies. Your response to international regulatory pressure involves a combination of legal challenges, technical workarounds, and occasionally philosophical arguments about the nature of free speech and global digital communications. The approach either represents principled resistance to government overreach or expensive stubbornness regarding regulatory compliance. The global regulatory backlash demonstrates that acquiring a social media platform involves not just technical and business challenges, but also diplomatic complications as your platform policies intersect with national sovereignty issues, international law, and cultural differences regarding free speech boundaries. You're staring at a quarterly revenue report that looks like it was designed by someone documenting the financial equivalent of a controlled demolition. The numbers don't just show declining advertising revenue. They demonstrate what happens when brand safety concerns meet cultural war controversy in a platform owned by someone who treats diplomatic business communications like Twitter polls. The advertiser boycott expands beyond individual companies, pulling campaigns to become an organised movement involving advertising agencies, media buyers, and brand safety organisations. The Global Alliance for Responsible Media begins issuing guidelines that essentially describe X as a high-risk advertising environment, which is corporate speak for maybe spend your marketing budget elsewhere. Major consumer brands face pressure from their own customers to avoid advertising on X, creating feedback loops where social media activism influences advertising decisions that affect social media platform revenue. It's like a digital economy version of recursion, where platform controversies create economic consequences that generate more platform controversies. The automotive industry presents particular challenges as Tesla's customer base overlaps significantly with consumers who object to your political commentary on X. You're simultaneously trying to sell electric vehicles to environmentally conscious buyers while tweeting viewpoints that alienate environmentally conscious voters, creating brand confusion that would fascinate marketing professors. Advertising agencies begin advising clients to diversify their social media spending across multiple platforms to reduce dependence on X, effectively treating your platform like a risky investment that should be balanced with safer alternatives. The recommendation resembles portfolio management for social media marketing budgets. Your response to advertiser boycotts involves launching legal challenges against organizations coordinating advertiser departures, arguing that organized boycotts constitute illegal market manipulation. The lawsuits create additional controversy while demonstrating either principled business defense or expensive litigation strategies that might discourage future advertiser cooperation. The legal strategy includes suing the Global Alliance for Responsible Media for allegedly coordinating advertiser boycotts, claiming damages from lost revenue due to what you characterize as organized market manipulation. The approach treats advertiser flight as a conspiracy rather than individual business decisions based on brand safety concerns. Linda Yaccarino, your CEO and former NBC Universal advertising executive, finds herself attempting to rebuild advertiser relationships while her boss publicly feuds with advertising industry organizations. Her position resembles someone trying to organize a dinner party while the host argues with the catering company. Alternative revenue strategies become necessary as advertising income drops below sustainable levels. You explore subscription services, creator monetization programs, premium features, and direct user payments to replace advertiser revenue. It's either innovative platform economics or evidence that sometimes the best solution to lost customers is finding different customers. The subscription model for X Premium includes features like longer posts, edit buttons, reduced ads, and verification badges, essentially creating a paid tier that offers users the ability to avoid some of the platform changes implemented since your acquisition. The irony resembles selling solutions to problems you've created. Small businesses, which historically represented a significant portion of Twitter's advertising revenue, also reduce their X spending due to a combination of political controversy and platform changes that affect advertising effectiveness. The loss of small advertiser revenue demonstrates how cultural battles can impact basic commercial relationships. International advertisers face additional complications as your political commentary creates brand association risks in global markets with different political sensitivities. Companies selling products in multiple countries must consider how association with your platform might affect their brands in various cultural contexts. The advertiser exodus creates opportunities for alternative platforms like Meta's Threads, Blue Sky, and Mastodon to attract marketing budgets previously spent on Twitter. Your platform transformation inadvertently benefits competitors by demonstrating the risks of platform dependence for advertising strategies. Your approach to the advertiser boycott includes direct appeals to users, encouraging them to support brands that continue advertising on X, while criticizing companies that have departed. This strategy treats platform users as political constituencies rather than just content consumers, creating unusual dynamics between social media and consumer activism. You're standing in the Tesla Gigafactory in Austin, Texas, at 6:42 a.m., watching Model Y vehicles roll off the production line with the mechanical precision of a system that has finally solved the manufacturing problems that nearly killed the company 5 years ago. The irony isn't lost on you that while X hemorrhages advertisers and faces regulatory challenges globally, Tesla continues breaking delivery records and expanding into new markets with the relentless efficiency of a machine designed to prove that electric vehicles are inevitable. The Tesla production numbers for 2023 tell a story that seems disconnected from the chaos surrounding your social media platform. The company delivers over 1.8 million vehicles, representing nearly 40% growth year over year, while you simultaneously alienate major advertising partners and engage in public feuds with international governments. It's as if your business empire operates in parallel universes with different physics governing success and failure. The vehicle production line represents the culmination of those brutal manufacturing lessons learned during the Model 3 production ramp, when you slept on factory floors and personally debugged assembly line bottlenecks. The automated systems now function with the kind of reliability that makes the Twitter blue verification chaos seem like a fever dream from an alternate timeline where you decided to complicate simple systems instead of simplifying complex ones. Tesla's financial performance remains remarkably insulated from X-related controversies, suggesting either that Tesla customers care more about vehicle quality than CEO tweets, or that electric vehicle adoption has reached a tipping point where individual personalities matter less than technological progress. The stock price fluctuates based on delivery numbers and manufacturing milestones rather than social media platform drama. The supercharger network expansion continues accelerating, with other automakers now adopting Tesla's charging standard and paying for access to your charging infrastructure. This represents the kind of platform dominant strategy that works brilliantly for electric vehicle adoption, but creates complications when applied to social media content moderation policies. International Tesla sales remain strong, despite regulatory tensions with various governments over X-content policies, indicating that automotive regulators and social media regulators operate in different bureaucratic universes. European customers continue buying Tesla vehicles, while European regulators investigate X-compliance with digital services regulations. The full self-driving software development progresses independently of social media controversies with regular updates that incrementally improve autonomous driving capabilities. The contrast between systematic FSD improvement and chaotic X feature rollouts suggests that different types of products require different management approaches, or that engineering complex systems works better than engineering social dynamics. Tesla's energy business grows quietly, while X generates headlines, with solar panel installations and utility-scale battery projects expanding globally. The energy storage systems provide grid stabilization services that are both profitable and beneficial for renewable energy integration, representing the kind of win-win business model that social media platform economics struggle to achieve. The manufacturing expansion into Mexico and potential new gigafactory locations demonstrates that Tesla's growth strategy remains focused on scaling electric vehicle production rather than diversifying into social media or payment platforms. The business focus contrasts sharply with X's everything app ambitions, suggesting different approaches to company building and platform development. Employee satisfaction at Tesla appears to remain higher than at X, based on retention rates and public statements from workers who seem proud of building vehicles that accelerate sustainable transportation adoption. The contrast suggests that building physical products that solve real problems might be more fulfilling than managing digital platforms that facilitate human arguments. Tesla's innovation pipeline includes the Cybertruck launch, next-generation vehicle platforms, and continued battery technology improvements that maintain the company's technological leadership in electric vehicles. The research and development investments focus on advancing transportation technology rather than exploring social media monetization strategies or content moderation algorithms. You're reviewing quarterly reports from Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink and X at 2:15 a.m., surrounded by documents that tell the story of someone simultaneously revolutionizing multiple industries while potentially damaging their own reputation through social media platform management. The numbers create a paradox that would fascinate business school professors. How can someone be extraordinarily successful at building rockets and electric vehicles while struggling to manage online discourse? SpaceX continues achieving milestones that would have seemed like science fiction a decade ago. The Starship program progresses toward orbital flight tests, while Falcon Heavy launches carry payloads to Mars trajectories, and the Starlink constellation expands global internet coverage. These accomplishments require the kind of systematic engineering excellence that makes your approach to social media platform governance seem randomly experimental by comparison. The Neuralink brain-computer interface trials represent another frontier of innovation that demands precise scientific methodology and careful regulatory compliance. The contrast between Neuralink's methodical approach to human trials and X's rapid-fire policy changes suggest that different types of innovation require different management philosophies, or that some industries have more serious consequences for experimentation failures. Tesla's autonomous driving technology continues advancing through incremental improvements and real-world testing that follows established safety protocols and regulatory frameworks. The FSD development process involves careful validation and gradual capability expansion. which operates under completely different principles than X's approach to platform feature rollouts and content policy updates. The innovation paradox extends to public perception, where your reputation as a technology visionary coexists uneasily with your image as a controversial social media platform owner. Potential Tesla customers might admire your work on sustainable transportation while disagreeing with your political commentary, creating cognitive dissonance that affects brand perception in unpredictable ways. International markets present additional complexity as your companies operate globally while your social media presence generates localized political controversies. Tesla vehicles sell successfully in countries where government officials criticize your X-platform policies, suggesting that product quality and CEO behavior influence different consumer decision-making processes. The talent acquisition challenges multiply as potential employees must consider whether working for your companies involves association with controversial social media positions. Top engineers might want to work on Mars colonization or sustainable transportation, but prefer to avoid workplaces where the CEO's tweets generate regular news cycles and regulatory scrutiny. Investor relationships become more complex as shareholders in Tesla and SpaceX must evaluate whether social media controversies affect the company's long-term prospects. Some investors focus exclusively on business fundamentals, while others worry that CEO reputation risks could impact future growth opportunities or regulatory relationships. The media coverage creates additional complications, as business journalists must cover both technological achievements and social media controversies involving the same person. Your SpaceX launches receive coverage alongside X policy changes, creating news cycles that blend space exploration with content moderation debates in ways that would confuse historians from earlier decades. Academic researchers studying innovation and entrepreneurship face the challenge of analyzing someone who simultaneously demonstrates exceptional ability to build complex technology companies and apparent difficulty managing social media platforms. The case study potential is enormous, but the conclusions might be contradictory depending on which aspects of your career they emphasize. The innovation paradox suggests either that different types of businesses require different skill sets, or that managing technology development and managing human social dynamics involve completely different challenges. Building rockets that reach orbit follows physics principles, while managing online discourse involves psychology, sociology, and cultural dynamics that operate according to less predictable rules. Your legacy will likely be determined by whether the technological innovations outweigh the social media controversies, or whether platform ownership fundamentally changes how people evaluate your contributions to electric vehicles, space exploration, and brain-computer interfaces. The outcome depends on whether future historians focus on the engineering achievements or the Twitter drama when assessing your impact on technological progress. You're sitting in your Starship at the SpaceX facility in Boca Chica, Texas, at dawn on December 15th, 2024, drafting what might be either a manifesto for human civilization or a very expensive stream of consciousness social media post about the future of technology, consciousness, and interplanetary commerce. The view through the spacecraft window overlooks the Gulf of Mexico, where rockets are preparing to carry humans to Mars while you simultaneously manage a social media platform that can't seem to solve the problem of people being mean to each other online. The master plan for human civilization involves making life multiplanetary through SpaceX, accelerating sustainable transportation through Tesla, advancing brain-computer interfaces through Neuralink, and apparently managing global discourse through X. This represents either the most ambitious integration of technology development in human history, or evidence that some people have difficulty focusing on single problems when multiple civilizational challenges exist simultaneously. Tesla's role in this future involves not just electric vehicles, but autonomous transportation networks that reduce the need for individual car ownership, while providing mobility services through self-driving fleets. The vision includes energy storage systems that stabilize electrical grids powered by renewable sources, creating infrastructure for sustainable civilization both on Earth and eventually on Mars. SpaceX's contribution extends beyond Mars colonization to include asteroid mining, space-based manufacturing, and eventually the kind of space infrastructure that makes science fiction seem conservative in its ambitions. The Starlink satellite constellation represents just the beginning of space-based internet infrastructure that could eventually connect not just Earth, but multiple planets and space habitats. Neuralink's brain-computer interfaces aim to address not just medical conditions like paralysis and depression, but eventually, the broader challenge of human-AI collaboration as artificial intelligence systems become more capable. The technology could allow humans to interface directly with digital systems, potentially including social media platforms in ways that make current keyboard and screen interactions seem primitive. X's evolution toward an everything app represents an attempt to create digital infrastructure that could serve as a model for how human civilization organizes information, commerce, and social coordination both on Earth and in space colonies. The platform experiments with governance, economic systems, and communication technologies that might be necessary for managing complex multi-planetary societies. The integration of these technologies creates possibilities that extend far beyond their individual capabilities. Autonomous Tesla vehicles could navigate using Starlink connectivity, while passengers use Neuralink interfaces to interact with X's Everything app, creating seamless integration between physical and digital infrastructure that resembles science fiction, becoming operational reality. The timeline for achieving these ambitious goals involves simultaneous development across multiple technologies and industries, with each advancement supporting progress in other areas. SpaceX missions to Mars require life support systems that could benefit from Tesla's energy technology, while space colonies would need communication systems that could evolve from X's digital platform infrastructure. The challenges multiply exponentially as each technology must function reliably in environments ranging from Earth's surface to Mars's atmosphere to the vacuum of space. Social media content moderation seems straightforward compared to ensuring that brain-computer interfaces work correctly while travelling between planets at interplanetary speeds. International cooperation becomes essential for projects of this scope, despite current regulatory tensions over X content policies. Mars colonization requires collaboration with space agencies worldwide, while sustainable transportation adoption benefits from global coordination on charging infrastructure and battery technology standards. The economic implications involve creating new industries and markets that don't currently exist, from space tourism to brain-computer interface applications to interplanetary commerce systems. X's experiments with creator monetization and digital payments could evolve into economic infrastructure for space colonies, where traditional banking systems might not be practically feasible. Your legacy will ultimately be determined by whether these integrated technological systems succeed in advancing human civilization, or become case studies in the limitations of trying to solve too many complex problems simultaneously. The outcome depends on whether ambitious vision can overcome the practical challenges of building multiple, revolutionary technologies while managing the social and political complexities of operating global platforms and space exploration companies. The future you're building involves either the successful integration of sustainable transportation, space exploration, brain-computer interfaces, and digital communication systems into a coherent framework for human advancement, or the most expensive lesson in history about the differences between engineering elegance and social complexity. Either way, it's going to be interesting to watch from Mars. Did Elon Musk save humanity through technology, or did humanity need saving from Elon Musk's technology? Comment below whether you think the future needs more visionary entrepreneurs or fewer billionaires with Twitter accounts. And remember, in space, no one can hear you tweet.